Yeah, well, I mean, in meat slaughter, um, they actually yeah, poke and sniff is the phrase that's used for this, but there's actually a visual look. And I've been in federally inspected slaughterhouses, for example, poultry, where where the inspector's standing there and he's checking off his box for temperature. Meanwhile, the tray holding the livers, the chicken livers, is green with broken gallbladders all in it. But because it's the right temperature and it doesn't smell bad, it's perfectly fine. At our farm, if we break, it happens. It's just, it happens. You break a gallbladder on a liver, we throw that liver away. We don't, and we hate to, but it just happens once in a while. But I've watched them just send these green gallbladder stuff through because it doesn't stink yet and it's at temperature. And so there's a lot of this that goes on in the slaughterhouse that's extremely subjective. It's like it's like they're regimented on one thing, but they're not regimented on another. And so a dairy farm that comes in with manure all over the cow's udder, for example, as long as they use enough chlorine and get it antimicrobial, that's perfectly fine. But a place that keeps everything really really clean, um, then gets that doesn't use all of the very very um, caustic and toxic antimicrobials might actually come out with a test that's worse than a dairy farm that comes in with a bunch of poop on the udder, but bathes everything with so much chlorine and antimicrobial, it actually looks cleaner because it's sterile, but it's got all sorts of floaties in it, but they're benign because they got killed. It's a very crazy thing. I think for me the biggest issue here is, let's say that I'm a dairy farmer and they come and check my tank and I don't and they're using the 45 cycles, which Massachusetts says categorically is a fraudulent cycle. And I dare to say something. I don't think your samples are accurate, or anything that's at the least bit uh, negative. There is no there's no appeal process. There's no appeal process. Where do you go to appeal this? They've got an order. They can come without a warrant. So you can't go say, well, you can't come unless you get a warrant. And you can't say, well, I'm going to appeal to your I'm going to appeal. There's no independent. The only appellate is their bosses, and their bosses are sending the guys out to do the sample. And it's kind of like an IRS audit. Where are you going to appeal? You appeal to an IRS board. Yeah, sure. They're going to be impartial. So I call this bureaucratic extortion, where the farmer and the more than the system is essentially held hostage by by regulatory constraint. If you voice disagreement, then they bully you. Then they look around and find something to that's whatever, a fan that has a fly on it, you know a screen door that has a hole big enough for a worm to crawl through. I mean, this test is a little bit like, think about it philosophically. Like, if you want to find something wrong with somebody, if you look hard enough, you can find something wrong with somebody. and,
Yeah.
and that's kind of the way this is. And so if you dare to voice anything short of complete submission and agreement, then they can just, what we say, throw the book at you and find things and just bully you and bully you and bully you into, to where you're out of business. You lose your license, or you lose something. Now, what I don't know is I don't know what happens to people that are completely outside the system, like somebody that's selling milk as raw milk as pet food, and there are a lot of them selling raw milk as pet food. This, if they actually do use this as a platform to prohibit raw milk sales, I think the only way to make it stick, and I admit I'm kind of thinking through this as I'm talking, so it's fresh. I think the only way they can make it stick would be a blanket prohibition of ingesting raw milk.
You mean across all species?
Yeah, 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 uh-huh. I don't see if they actually determine that bird flu in raw milk is a health hazard, similar to whatever, fentanyl, cocaine, methamphetamine. All right. If that becomes the determination, then the if that becomes a determination, then there will be a criminalization of ingesting raw milk. That means you won't be able to milk your own cow and drink its milk. Just like you can't have a methamphetamine lab and take methamphetamine yourself. And that would be a ramp up. I don't see how they can, let's say, go after the raw milk dairies, especially the ones that are operating without a license, under pet food, or herd share, where they're outside the inspection system. I don't see how they can shut those down unless they actually make a blanket prohibition of ingesting, not selling, but ingest, because the selling won't get the herd share. That's not a sale. That's drinking milk from your own cow you've invested in. So somehow, if this is their ultimate intent, they're going to have to move beyond the sale and go to the consumption. And that would be a major change.
Yeah. Well, I mean, my gosh, they did that with alcohol and look what happened.
Yes, yes, absolutely. Yeah. So then we have we have bootleg cows. You got bootleg milk. Uh, and, and then you have the whole problem of forbidden fruit. You know, I can imagine that it would just stimulate the demand for forbidden fruit. There's an allure, to I'm getting forbidden fruit. That's just a philosophical reality.
Yeah.
And so
Well, some of us might start drinking it just to stick it to them, as they say, like just to make that political statement that you will not take that right from me.
There would be a bit of a war. I'm not saying a nuclear war, but there would be a bit of a political war on their hands if they actually tried to do this. But as I look at the strategy, at the rollout of this strategy and these orders, you can't come to any conclusion, to me, except that this is yet another angle to try to demonize and ultimately criminalize raw milk.
Yeah.
And it just depends on how far they're going to go. Friends, want to dive deeper into our thought-provoking conversations? Become part of the Beyond Labels family today by joining below. For any gift amount, you'll get access to the full uncut episodes.
Every contribution, whether big or small, keeps this podcast going.
So join us and expand your Beyond Labels experience. Thank you.